Doctor, in a slightly different vein, why did the hospital stop the use of the colony farms for patients?
I've been asked this question many times. We had a wonderful herd of registered cattle. We had a good herd of registered swine. But it wasn't a paying proposition. We were prohibited from having patients working on mechanized equipment. This day and age, we don't run farms with mule-drawn or horse-drawn cultivators, plows. You just can't operate a farm that way successfully. Many of the patients that came in that were farmers didn't want to go out to the farm. They had their mechanized equipment home. They weren't going to run a plow with a horse or a mule. We also found that you can't run a farm successfully with employees working a 40-hour week. I don't think you'll find many farmers that have a 40-hour week. I would say their weeks were 80, 90 hours or above. So it became a costly procedure. We also found that we could buy things outside cheaper than we could produce them here at the hospital. Mr. Walker, who was my business administrator, came and talked to me one day and said, I think we should get out of the cow business, the milk business. He said it's costing us $5.90 to produce 100 pounds of milk. Then we have to have it pasteurized. He said we can buy pasteurized milk for $5 a hundred. He said I can buy apples on the market cheaper than we can produce them here with our sprays, with our caretakers, with our expense of looking them over, picking them. We tried to raise chickens. We had 2,000 chickens. We raised them for meat. Mr. Walker said we can buy them downtown cheaper. Now we have to pay for the feed, then we have to pay the butcher to clean the chickens, kill the chickens, cut them up. He said we can buy it cheaper downtown. He said beans. On our farm, he said we produce beans. We pay for all the beans that are brought in at town prices. Many times the beans are old. They're spoiled. We throw over half of them out. He said it's not paying. Let's get out of the business. I think other institutions found the same thing because the department wrote to me and asked me if I would have any objection to getting rid of the farms. After talking to Mr. Walker, I was happy to, because I couldn't see spending money on something that was useless. It wasn't providing help for the patients. It was providing a chore for the patients, which many of them didn't like. We had the cattle auctioned. I think the state made quite a bit of money on that. Most of the swine we killed. We used that as pork. Of course, there was another reason for giving up the swine. When the city moved its borders out to what is now called Drake Road, we used to call it Colony Road, it was right across the street. In fact, the city line ran right down the middle of the street. We had our piggery there, and there were some mobile home units just maybe a quarter block from this. They objected to the smell. If you look back, state hospitals had pigs for only one reason: garbage disposal. All of the garbage from the hospital was taken out to the piggery, was boiled, cooked, sterilized, and then fed to the pigs. The pigs weren't diseased by it, but there was no place where the hospital could put the garbage at that time. So we used the pigs for garbage disposal. When the city limits moved out there, before the health officer came out and said you got to get rid of your piggery, we got rid of it.
Doctor, if the decision has been made, and it would sound as though it's not about to be reversed, that the colony farms concept would no longer be appropriate or economical, and we all recognize the value in property, and the extensive acreages that are available and once utilized, could not those acreages be sold and those funds utilized for mental health in this state?
The state has a rule or procedure whereby any land that is in excess, that's not being utilized, must be declared surplus to Lansing. At that time, other agencies are able to get that land. When we declared County Farm, Colony Farm surplus, Michigan State wanted some of it for orchard research, and I recommended this to one or two of the senators. I don't know if that bill ever went through, but Western Michigan University immediately put in that they wanted the basic land that we had, and I think this land was given to them, including Colony Lake.
Oh.
The area across the street from the hospital, when we declared it surplus, was given partly to the city for a fire station. They built their school administrative building on old state hospital property. They let the state build an institution for the blind. John F. Kennedy Center was built on state property. This was through arrangements between the city and the state. When we sold Brook Farm years ago, this was put up for sale and was sold. The state got that money. That goes into the general treasury and does not go back into the Department of Mental Health. In the past, we owned the land immediately south of the hospital, going a distance of about a mile, and down to Stadium Road, which was a distance of about a half mile. This was very valuable land, and the state sold this. Part of the land was sold back by the buyer to the school board, was sold to two churches. They built a Jewish synagogue on this land. The Child Guidance Center in Kalamazoo was built on this land. They sold part of it to Kalamazoo Christian for a high school. The rest was sold to real estate men who developed this. In fact, this is high-valued real estate, and I wish that I had owned it, but I could never have bought it.
Well, it's nice to know that many of those lands then that were utilized at one time in the program of the hospital have gone on to another use and to a good economic use. I was wondering, just one last question regarding the colony farms. Did the patients live on the farms, such as in cottages, or were these merely work areas where they went out and provided a function and then returned to the hospital grounds?
The colony farm concept was developed by one of the superintendents around 1880, 1890, in which he felt that the patients should be removed from the community. They should be out on farms where farm work was available, where they could enjoy the fresh air, could enjoy scenery, could enjoy a lot of trees. So the state bought this land. There were 2 little lakes on this land, and he built 3 cottages out there for women patients. Each cottage had about room for 80 patients. Of course, when he built them, they had room for only 40. But as time went on, we gradually increased the census because the patient load gradually increased. He also built 1 home for male patients, for men. And this went up to about 100 patients. These people lived there. They ate in the central dining room. The women patients ate in the central dining room. We had our own kitchen out there. We had our own cooks. The employees that worked out there lived in a 4th building in which the central dining room was located. The patients lived there. They worked on the farms. They had their activities on the farms. They had their own little gardens at times, flower gardens, vegetable gardens. On the male side, many of the men were involved in taking care of the cattle, in taking care of the pigs, the chickens. They also worked on the farms. And as you will recall, I said we didn't have mechanized equipment. Much of this was hand done. They hoed, they pulled weeds. This was done by hand. So there was plenty of occupation for the people back in those days. As time went on and machinery came in, the patients continued this. They didn't like it. I don't blame them, because it was hard work. They enjoyed the lakes because the patients could go fish. The Employees Association built a fishing dock down there with a fence around it, and every year it had to be repaired because the kids would tear down much of the place. They'd have to reboard it, put their fence up again. But the patients enjoyed fishing there. They had good perch, good bluegills, some bass, a lot of bullheads, which I didn't like, but the patients enjoyed them. Many of them would bring the fish back, and the employees would fry them for them. So they would have a fish fry on their own or for a group. These people enjoyed the farms because it was beautiful out there. Beautiful scenery, a lot of little animals running around. They enjoyed walking around. There was little traffic around there. Many of them hated to come back.